decline of 2.84%. And for the OPEC basket, dealers offer $63.78 per barrel. And it stays in flat 0.00%. Well, let's get to our first conversation this afternoon as President Bola Tinubu marks 2 years in office. Many Nigerians say the series of structural reforms and sector-specific initiatives aimed at stabilizing the nation's macroeconomy, expanding access to finance, and accelerating inclusive development has begun to take firm roots on the economy. According to the World Bank, under the President Bola Tinubu administration, Nigeria's economy achieved its fastest growth in 10 years in 2024. Key milestones of the presidential achievements includes unification of the foreign exchange market, the establishment of regional development commissions, and the new education financing and credit access to targeted investment scheme in health and human capital, a renewed push into the blue economy, and resurgent investors' confidence, opening up new funds in oil and gas, energy, mining, and agriculture, to list but a few. Well, let's talk more on these developments, achievements, major policies, and reforms that have shaped the economy. I have joining me Professor Ken Ife, who is a development economist. He has a consultant background in economics management, and you know, a lot of development around Professor Ife. He's gone so around the world speaking around macroeconomic policy issues. Welcome, Professor Ife, who joins me live from our Abuja studios. Prof, thank you so much. It's good to have you on the show this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
Prof, I think we should start clearly with the overview of what you think about all of the policy moves of the present administration and where it keeps us at the moment.
I think there are three ways to look at what he has done. One is that there is the good and very good market reforms and business competitiveness reforms that have taken place. Then there are an area of what you call work in progress. I wouldn't say not so good, but work in progress. And that's around the governance and all the institutions. And a lot of things have been happening there, but they are all work in progress. Then you have the other category where you will say not so good. You might well call that ugly. And those ones are really about citizen welfare, micro economy side of things. So you could have all that. But if I may begin, what I would say is, first of all, there's an avalanche of positive remarks and assessments and ratings of Nigerian macroeconomy. The sovereign rating, for example, from Fitch, that says our long-term foreign currency issuer default is positive, is from moving from B, and the outlook is stable. Others are following up. You have the JP Morgan report, very positive. You have the Moody's report, very positive. You have the IMF Article 4 report that was conducted recently, all ticking good. And even the World Bank report as well. All of them are saying positive things about macroeconomic governance. And if you go into the specific, what that means in effect is that they should boost investor confidence in our economy. And there are many more reasons for some of those. Those you can find in the subsidy removal, for example, which is very hot, and he did it, he took that decision. But only about half of the gains actually entered into the economy. A lot of it went to the governors and the government, but then very little. Where are the other ones? The other 50% were trapped by NNPC. And they used that to their inefficient operations and all of that. So the public would have got more if only NNPC didn't stand on the way. So you could see how that is affecting citizen welfare. But there are other things. The major thing that the government has actually achieved is from central bank. The exchange rate harmonization is successful. That means removing that arbitrage between those two rates and then telling investors, particularly the portfolio investors, to come in, I'm going to hold that rate, invest, and you can take out your money. And then they also showed good faith by wiping away much of the $7 billion debt. A lot of it, all the ones that they verified, they have paid. There will be some that have not been verified. So all the airlines They're all back in business, and it's all because they did all that cleaning up. The bank recapitalization is the big one, because what has happened now, if the banks all recapitalize, that could bring in about $3.3 billion. But I think we could do as much as $10 billion. And that they should incentivize those banks that are in the tier one that want to do 1 trillion capitalization. They should be incentivized, as we did in 2005. Tell them, look, if you go to 1 trillion, we'll give you $500,000 million to manage, as we did in the first one. So they must be incentivized so that we can all aim at having about $10 billion, or at least some of this. I'm sure about 5 of them will get over 1 trillion capitalization, which is a matter of incentive. Then, of course, the Naira to crude is a very good one. It's actually in the PIA, but the president has the courage to implement this. And if there's anything that you cannot take away from the president, is courage, political courage. All we need to do is to draw his attention to where the decision has to be made. He has the courage to make those decisions. So you can't accuse him of political will. No, he does have it in great quantity. And the IMF repayment, the bullet repayment of the IMF money, 3.4 billion paid off, because we borrowed that money during COVID to buy all these medicine and all of that. These are significant signals, positive signals going out that makes people more confident about our economy. But on the other hand, you are going to ask me, but why is that not rubbing off on foreign direct investment? Of course, the answer is that foreign direct investment looks more closely on the market condition. And energy crisis and insecurity and very high transportation costs and input costs have actually put them at bay. So we should focus a lot more on domestic investment. Because I reckon that if 20% of the effort we are making on foreign investment is directed to domestic investment, then we won't be where we are, to be honest. If Dangote could put $20 billion into the economy as a domestic investor, what are we talking about? We have more things to talk about that. And then if you come to governance, governance is an area where we have some serious issues. But even then, too, part of the governance is what they did on passport. Rapid release, you come there, 1 day clearance, hours clearance, and then you can now have what they call expedited visa issuance. That's a big plus for market business environment. And then all this, the tax reform bill is also another one. It will take a little while for it to sit in. It has just only been approved, but that is a big thing when you talk to GDP growth rate. Because all the 4 measures of GDP are all accounted for in that reform bill. It goes down to the citizens, remove all the bills they are paying on VAT, on education and health and all of that. You're actually increasing retention of revenue and then more aggregate demand. So that increases GDP. They go to employers, MSN, increase from 25 million to 50 million before they worry about returns. That is increasing retention. They can hold the jobs. They can create more jobs. They will create aggregate output. That goes GDP. You go around to our our balance of payment. We are rocking about 6.8 billion. That increases GDP. Then not to talk of government spending, not to talk of... So all the parameters that determine that are all up. So you will see that we could do more than 6% on GDP growth rate. All because of that reform. So that reform gives us, a big thick on the business environment. And then you saw 2 bills that came through. The Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission bill passed through. And then you have the SEC. They are also revised, also passed through, which now means that the SEC is in a better position to manage the likes of cryptocurrencies and all of that. And whatever contribution they could make is all up for grabs. So good things, extremely good things, but then you have all the area that are very, very challenging, which is the one I was talking about, governance, because we are still fighting corruption. And I have to say this to you, Tolu. Why spend hundreds of billions of naira fighting corruption? And then you ignore the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007 that stops civil servants from touching your money. Why? Simply because we have the law that you don't have the penalties that go with it. You don't have compliance that goes with it. You don't have all. That's what is missing. Apart from other technical areas in the bill, but the one that is missing, if you don't have penalties and if you don't have an enforcement, is as well as not have it at all. And if you look at two establishments that are making good money and doing well, CBN makes hundreds of billions of naira from taxing these banks when they default, or all those stuff. And then you have NCC, Communication Commission, sitting on those digital. So they make money because they are enforcing and they are disciplining those two sectors. But generally around the civil service, we have issues. And then if you explore more, you find out how we are not fully implementing the FRA 2007 that governs borrowing, that governs fiscal
all right,
strategy and the medium-term framework, and all the whole thing about this, the prudence, transparency is low, and all that. So many issues in that area.
Prof.
Then the last one, of course, is why are we worried about citizen welfare? The people are saying, yes, there have been upstream, good things upstream, but they're not hitting the ground.
Exactly, so Prof. Allow me interject.
Allow me. Still saying we can't feel it.
Prof, can you hear me? Allow me interject there because I want you to stay on that point. Now, many say government have gotten it right with the macro side of it, macroeconomics. But the micro is where everyone is worried about. Yes. So take it from there. When do you think that it will start to trickle down?
Yeah. Tell you one of the items, when the governor spoke, when the president spoke on 29th of May 2023, there were three things that he mentioned. He talked about harmonization of the currency, which he delivered on now. He talked about subsidy removal, which he has delivered. But it was just that we are now hoping that what was trapped by NNPC will come down. And if it comes down, it gives him more resources to address the likes of social inclusion agenda, employment action, and improving on health. Look at that amount of money when it comes. And then also it deals with the issue that the third one he was wanting a consumer credit explosion. And it took so long before they came with it. And I kept on saying that this is critical because if CBN is withdrawing from domestic finance intervention, and then you need something to support the MSMEs, you need something to support credit creation in the economy, but you have to watch it. So I was suggesting that focus that credit to the manufacturers. Focus, and I gave an example. If you are making 10,000 cars in Nigeria, if you bring credit into that area, they could raise to 100,000 cars. And that means if you walk in and put 10%, then you can walk away with a car, and that 90% will drop on the company that is assembling the car. And I also gave the example that Nigeria imports 400,000 second-hand cars from Cotonou, through Cotonou, and then only 200,000 from Lagos Rolo Park. So the thing is, how much is it costing you? It costs you a minimum of $10,000 for a car. That means $4 billion is wasted as a minimum in that transfer from Cotonou to here. And you're not even getting tax from any of those cars. Now, if you look at what you are saving, and then look at the job opportunities you are creating by multiplying it by 10, the output, you will displace that second-hand economy. And the benefit will hit the ground running. Civil servants can now go and buy a car. Everybody can afford a car. Just put 20% or 10%, you move away with a car. That industry will start growing phenomenally because they have access to credit, and very cheap credit for that matter. Not for you to just carry the money and share it to civil servants and say that is not. They are going to consumer explosion. That's inflation. They are buying inflation. So that's the point. And I'm glad they now set up a consumer credit corporation. Let us hope that they will do what they need to do to direct that credit to the manufacturing end, to the capital expenditure end, so that people can, can breathe life into the economy. Then, of course, you have this whole thing about minimum wage. Minimum wage is another one that directly touches civil servants. It's a joke. How do you get it into the private sectors? You can't force private sector. But the state governments are also playing ball. But all of these people are not up to 10% of the employment. Government sector, they don't employ up to 10%. So it's still going to be, how do you make sure that business competitiveness creates and sustains their employment. And then I'm glad that the fiscal review reform is also meeting them at their point of need by increasing their cash. So there are other areas like student loan, extremely helpful. But we have to also think it through from the point of view of how you widen the participation of a bigger number on that, and how that also helps the university funding system. So, but it's very, very good. We've all been talking about this for years. Awolowo did that in the Western region, and posterity. George, we have the evidence. Many of the politicians actually benefited from that. Very positive things that he did on farmers to give them over 2 million bags of fertilizer. But we can do more. We can do more. And so how that fought food production last year. Yeah. We have a good harvest because government released all those from the reserves and also. So it was helpful. But notice that it's better to use fertilizer to push them into productivity than to share food. Sharing food is not a sustainable investment. It's not even an investment. So the two of them differ in their approach and the dividend that they bring. So there are many ways that the government can improve the policy, the benefit hitting the ground.
Yeah, Prof, if we look at our current inflation figures, the last check, and how that correlates with what we got from the last MPC meeting. Many will say that they expect that there should start to be a bit of reduction coming from the MPC's angle, saying moving forward, yes, everyone says that last meeting, the retention is a welcome development. But some analysts say moving forward, we should start to reason or look at a bit of reduction. Now, my concern is this. Manufacturers, business owners continue to groan under this situation, saying, how do we borrow? How do we run our businesses? How do we thrive with such a high percentage of interest?
Join now.
All right.
No, I think we are pressing the wrong button.
All right, Prof, give me a moment.
Because
we have some live pictures where we just we are continuing our show. That's not going to affect us, but there are live pictures now that we need to take from live pictures that are coming in from Ondo, where there's the governor is launching the dualization of the Akungba Ikare Akoko Road. Governor Ayedatiwa of Ondo State. That's live from Akungba Akoko. Business other platforms.
Somebody. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Your Excellency,
All right there. So, Prof, yeah, just had to do that introduction. But, Prof, yes, you were making a point. You said we were pressing the wrong button.
Yes. See, the Monetary Policy Committee is focusing on a very core mandate issues. And they are looking at stability, price stability. They have achieved substantial financial system stability. Very, very stable, because all the indicators is that the financial system is stable based on all the ratios, non-performing loans, capital adequacy ratios, all of those ratios are stable and good. Now, they are concerned about the money in circulation. They are concerned about the impact of the 33 trillion that was the one that was printed, the ways and means, the impact on money supply. They're also looking at credit to the private sector. They are looking at the negative real interest rate that we were having when the inflation was so high, and the monetary policy rate was lower. So there was a negative real interest rate. So they have to continue to up the rate to a point where you have an inflection and the inflation comes below the exchange rate. Well, by rebasing the economy, the inflation came down below the rate. So there was no longer an excuse, apart from the other things, for you to continue to up the monetary policy rate. But that does not provide you the excuse to start bringing it down. You couldn't bring it down. You have to look at the wider environment. And we had Donald Trump sniffing blood everywhere, causing problem. giving us a 14% duty, and the other countries in Africa 30%, 40%, and then 150% to China. All of those will mean that not only what we are going to face as a duty in our export to America, but our import-dependent economy means we're exposed. We're exposed to every conceivable macroeconomic headwind. So whatever happens, whether it is between America and China, between them is $600 billion trade. And the trade, WTO forecasted that they will drop by about 90%. So what is going to happen to import when $500 billion worth of goods between these two countries is looking for another market? So China will have to will devalue their currency, which they did a bit. They will also engage in predatory pricing by subsidizing their manufacturers, exporters to entire your economy and then decimate your manufacturing sector. They will affect your foreign exchange, and our bank fought that foreign exchange pressure. So it can't, in the circumstance of what we are seeing, start tinkering again with the rate, trying to bring it down. You don't want a government, a CBN that brings it down and then quickly starts bringing it up again. No, you can't do that. You have to watch and see where the final trend is heading before you begin to tune in. So that's why I was opposed for them to don't put them under that kind of pressure, because the coast is not very clear at all in this circumstance.
Well, getting more interesting now. You talked about investment, Dangote's investment in the oil and gas sector. But, Prof, my question to you really in that space would be, what do you make of this pricing that we see? I don't want to call it a price war. Some have said it's a price war. Today, 15 naira is off. Tomorrow, 20 naira is off. Tomorrow, NNPC is reducing their price. Tomorrow, Dangote is bringing down prices. So, and we have this back and forth. Marketers on the other hand are saying, no. Business is not going well for us. We took loans to run this business and all of that. Where do you stand in all of this, particularly in a deregulated market?
First of all, we want full compliance with the PIA. That is where the buck stops. Full compliance. That's number one. Number two, if we comply with the terms of the PIA, there will be competition. And that means it will restrict the monopoly of the NNPC. And it is that area that is causing problem. Naira to crude is an implementation of the PIA. It's there in the law. So the president is just have the courage to implement it. And because he started implementing it, just see the consequence. Dangote came in with 20 billion, 650,000 barrels a day refinery that can meet not only the needs of Nigeria, but the needs of the whole of the West Africa region. Now, the second one is that NNPC started by denying the receipts from the crude coming through the central bank. They were taking it. And then, normally central bank experiences about $3 billion of revenue, of receipts coming through them. It was only about 10%, 300, it was sending to CBN. So in that way, it was starving us. Then they had control of moving all the crude to people who refine them. And then when we come back, they give us only one product, PMS, out of more than 10 different products. And then come back and ask government to go and look for $4.5 billion as subsidy. We'll get rid of that subsidy. But they were also, because of their structure, they were trapping some of that subsidy, where the World Bank said it's about up to 50%. So we came from that. Now look at the implementation, what the law says, PIA law. PIA law says the local, the midstream and downstream agency should always get the data on the local processing capacities of the local refineries and feed that to the upstream authority. The upstream authority will now produce a schedule for those who are drilling crude to make sure that, according to the law, they satisfy local demand before exporting. That's number one. Number two, they need that information to know when there is deficit in the supply availability of refined products. Then you can now consider issuing license for importing. They just went and issued license for importing. When we have a capacity to meet the need. There was no deficit. Instead, we should be having surplus. The result was 200 million liters of PMS entered into the country. And then the law also says when you do have that, you should have all the people involved in crude come and see the quality of the crude, because there are standards. And those standards have about 11 measurements that you have to measure: octane number, specific gravity, pour point, flash point. There are about 11 of them. For where? NNPC doesn't have internationally recognized laboratory that can use the American standard. Neither does the NMD, the MDA, PRA thing. They don't have. It's only Dangote that has. So why don't you take that crude and go and measure, go to Dangote with all of you, go and check the quality. What we now have is that we are having poor quality food, PMS coming into the country. According to ECOWAS, in last January, you shouldn't have sulfur content more than 50 ppm. But they are having 5-10 times that amount. You know, it just, and then why would you be importing this when NNPC said that their 2 refineries are working? They burnt over $10 billion over the last 10 years repairing refinery. That $10 billion would have built about 20 modular refineries. Now they are working, we are only producing naphtha. And then whoever is importing that PMS, you have to tell us who is importing it. They deny that they are not the one importing it. But the fact of the matter is that, look, in ECOWAS, we have what we call subsidiarity principle. Subsidiarity principle means leave for the lower level of government or entities what they are more efficient in doing. We at the region, we focus on regional integration, regional trade. We focus on regulations. And when we do those regulations, we don't get into implementation. We encourage our member states and support them to implement. And we expect federal government to support state governments and local government to implement all those aspects that are more efficient, more risk. Let them manage the risk that they are better positioned to manage. In the same way, the federal government and their NNPC have gone into upstream, midstream, downstream petroleum industry. Get out of this downstream. What is it doing there with retailing fuel? When we have more than 40,000 retailers retailing fuel, what's it doing there? Then why are you meddling with midstream processing? Sell the refinery. If you can't operate it, sell it. And then stop the distortion. So it is the distortion and the inefficient operation that has actually consumed half of our what would have saved from fuel subsidy. And now you are now looking at somebody that is spent 20 billion. You are pointing your fingers at somebody that is spent 20 billion and saying is anti-competitive. What do you mean by anti-competitive? You compete with the highest quality of petrol being produced globally now because they're supplying it to America, supplying their refined product to Saudi Aramco, you know, in shiploads. Prof. Now you are now competing by bringing what do you call it? Substandard products.
Prof,
it doesn't make sense. That is the point.
Let me respectfully interject and say the fear of Nigerians, and even for all of us, many of us, is the fear of monopoly. And that is it. And the issue of substandard products, that has been argued because the regulators have not come out to tell us that these products are substandard. We have the NMDPRA, we have the authority, we have the NRP, all of these agencies that have been built up out of the PIA. They have not come to tell us all of this. So, but for me, the fear of many Nigerians I have spoken to is monopoly. What do you make of that?
Let me tell you something. There's no such issue as a monopoly if you have already some companies that are already in the midstream modular refineries, running modular refineries. Where is the monopoly? If NNPC says that 2 of their refineries are operating, but they're not producing PMS, you know, so where is the monopoly? The fact of the matter is this: the quality of the product can only be tested with transparency, where all these interested parties are witnessing the test results. So all of them, the marketers and other producing companies, will go to Dangote that has internationally recognized, and they will carry out the test. Maybe you saw the members of National Assembly come there to watch the test being taken in their presence. So somebody can't issue certificate from outside. The fuel they are sending to Nigeria are fuel that they could not sell in their home country because they are caught up with standards in the European countries. So they can't sell those fuels there. So they will issue certificate and dump it then here. And then you don't want us to validate the quality. So what are you talking about? They're now invalidating the quality. And you are dumping it here, killing all our engines and causing so much pollution. So that is a no-no. That is not competitiveness. You get competitiveness by getting a help and enable others to build their capacity. But okay, I said, for example, I feel sore that some retailers are packing up. They shouldn't do that. Those moguls that are importing, those marketers that are importing fuel, all of them have enough money to start a modular refinery. Give them license. A modular refinery of 20,000 barrels a day costs only $75 million. Maximum is $100 million if you want to have a catalytic converter to produce PMS. So let them go and build their own. It's easy. All of them can float one or two. And those modular refineries are sitting in the waters there in Texas. You can have them here within 6 months and they're operating. Then use your tank farms to store the product and then distribute to your local distributors and then export. Simple. That is backward integration. That is the meaning of backward integration, which we did in cement, and we are now doing this. So that is how you help them. And then those modular refineries can take the naphtha from the two refineries of from NNPC, and then refine to give PMS, which is good. NNPC, if it doesn't want to sell their refinery, now let them continue to produce naphtha. And then let new modular refineries finish up the business to convert them to PMS. You have competition, healthy competition. And I have to tell you this. Last Christmas, December, something that has not happened for 20 years happened. We had fuel sold all over the country at a single price. And then there was no queue. There was no hoarding. But it cost somebody. It cost Dangote over 10 billion naira to do the equalization. Because the equalization agency has been scrapped. People are claiming they're owing the marketers 100 billion naira. So Dangote footed that bill to ensure that every part of Nigeria had that same price, no queuing. Wasn't that wonderful? Nobody said a word of thank you. It's not fair. And then when he had the opportunity of doing naira to crude, he brings down the price. Others should bring down the price. So what is the complaint about? The capacity to have modular refineries are there. Now, NNPC should now deploy more on upstream business. And then it should go to capital market to stop the shenanigan. They should go to capital market. I have told you many times on your program, how Saudi Arabia needed $25 billion. They didn't borrow from World Bank. They said, tell me the value of Saudi Aramco in 2019. It was valued at $1.5 billion. They said, is that so? Oh yeah, sell 5%. Now, 2 years after they got their act together, the value went to $2.3 billion. Come on, that's what I want NNPC to do. Go to the capital market, release dollars to government to deal with their problem, and then get investors in, get big boys. Have you ever complained about NLNG? Federal government has a huge share there and is getting money every month. So what is the problem? We just want to close our eyes and then pressing the wrong button.
Prof, let's wrap this up now. In your outlook, what do you think, generally now, back to the economic situation and what we expect moving forward? What are your projections?
No, I like the idea that you have a new management team in NNPC. I really like the idea. And those are business minds. And I know that even without going to the capital market, which I still want them to go to, because you now have efficient managers that can work with capital market. All right? So that NNPC can focus. Let me tell you one simple thing that they could do. They could concentrate on shedding all those fats that they're carrying, all those dead weights that they're carrying, and then build strategic crude reserve. Because when you have strategic crude reserves like America and Saudi, you use it to augment your quota. When your quota is going down, you release. And then also, all the modular refineries around you will get crude. Do you understand? Sorry?
Yeah, I'm with you. Go ahead, Prof. I can hear you.
I can hear.
Prof, can you hear me?
What I'm saying is that there is a lot of work for NNPC to do.
Yeah.
They should focus on upstream. Because if you don't invest in upstream, then the cost of extracting crude continue to rise. Because the more you extract the crude, the harder it is to get more. So the price keeps going up. So you deal with that by going into frontier basins, going into all the other areas, developing and exploring and exploiting, getting more fields. and then you reduce the, and then also look at the offshore. The offshore, the oil majors are living onshore and going offshore. Then get some FLNG in offshore that can do floating LNG, and then give us money. They could be giving us $500 million every month, and then they will do the investment. The NNPC has their work cut out, and they create a strategic reserves where the crude could be made available to the various refineries, small modular refineries. And you're carrying over 120, what they call it, the oil fields, those suboptimal oil fields, marginal fields. They should get rid of these marginal fields, get investors. Look at gas being flared up all over the place. They should open up the investment for private sector to pour in money and do what, and then coordinate and give them what they need. Instead, they are stampeding the entire spectrum of midstream and downstream, throwing their weight all over the place, and actually destroying the competitiveness of the economy. And then in the state of government should go and wrap this self around successful people. There are successful companies in Nigeria that are self-sufficient in power production. You know, you have, look at the ones in LMA, look at Dangote, they all have their own power. So have a cluster of $50 billion worth of downstream companies. Surround them around the people that are already sufficient. And the example is this. If you go to Texas, Texas have over 32 refineries in Texas and almost 5,000 midstream and downstream petrochemical industries. So how is Texas different from our area, our Lekki and Bayelsa area where you have all this concentration? They only have about 20 billion proven gas reserves there. We have 37.7 billion proven gas crude reserve. So why are we not heading in that direction? Those that have the money, have the capacity, build ecosystem of SMEs around them so that they can deal with their supply chain, they will deal with downstream production. There are thousands of products that can come out, and not just petrol and urea and diesel. No, all chemicals can come out from the petrochemical industry, from the refinery. It's just government, surround them so that we can breathe some fresh air into our economy.
Professor Ken Ife, I must thank you so much for your time. Development economist, interesting conversation today. I must say thank you so much for your time.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Prof. Well, before we go to our next conversation, Nigeria's federal government has relaunched the National Talent Export Program. That's a key initiative under President Bola Tinubu's diversification and youth empowerment agenda. The Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Jumoke